I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners for March 19th, 2019. I invite you to stand if you choose while Commissioner Nash leads us in the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me, if you would, in praying to the God of your choice, or none at all. As we gather to make decisions for our community, may we use our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us. May we always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Amen. If you would please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we call the roll tonight, we want to extend our sympathy to the family for Sue Perrigan. She lost her father in the last couple of days, and that's why she's not here this evening. So if you would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Denning.
Here.
Commissioner Nash.
Here.
Commissioner Beasley Brown.
Here.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Here. Your awards and recognitions, do you have anything tonight, sir? I have one. I'd like to invite up Mrs. Amy Cardwell, the Sports Sales Director for the Bowling Green Area and Convention and Visitors Bureau. And we all know Amy from a lot of things, but we also know her for raising her brother over here, Brent Childers. So.
I can't believe he has to claim me in public now, so that's going to be rough.
Unfortunately, he'll get the last word because you're
Right?
going first. So.
Exactly.
Who's your brother, Mary?
Brent.
Brent. You didn't know that, Joe?
Lots of light bulbs going off for Joe Denning right now.
That's what's wrong with him.
Please, after you leave this building here tonight, please do not tell anyone else that that's your brother, okay?
All right, I won't.
Keep it to yourself.
He gave me a great nephew, though, so. I thank the court for taking the time out to speak to me tonight. I wanted to take a moment and introduce Eric Ward with the Mid-South Conference. And the Mid-South Conference has become one of the largest accounts that our hotels have as far as booking room nights throughout the year in Warren County and Bowling Green. And they keep our hotels busy and a lot of our facilities busy. And Eric had a few things he would like to share with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric Ward with the Mid-South Conference.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate you being here this evening.
Mayor, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here. As far as I know, I'm not related to anyone in this room. So don't have to worry about anything, any impartiality. I just wanted to come by. I try to come by once a year and just give you a brief update on what we're doing with as far as the Mid-South Conference here in Bowling Green and Warren County. As Mayor, I know you're aware, Commissioners, hopefully you're aware, we've been here in Bowling Green since the spring of 2015, and our presence has grown considerably since that time. This year, 2018-19, our fiscal year runs June to July, or July to June. So when I look at things with Amy's calendar, sometimes it throws me off because she's January to December, but this year, 18-19, we'll have 18 events that'll take place here in the Bowling Green area, and I think the list that Amy just showed me included about 6,000 room nights. Is that correct? About 6,000 room nights that we'll be responsible for generating over the course of this year. We've added a number of events. Our participation continues to increase, both in the sports that we're able to bring here with our championships and the number of schools that are part of the Mid-South Conference. Next year, we'll be adding Thomas More University. Will be a new member of the Mid-South Conference, and they'll enjoy their participation in our Mid-South Conference championships here in the Bowling Green area. I think the thing that we've been working on the hardest and will be the most excited about when we're able to announce all the details, back in the fall, Mayor, I think you're aware that we started a partnership with Bowling Green Independent Schools, and we've been able to use a lot of their facilities this year to host our championships. And one of the things that we've been working on since we started coming here in 2015 was a place to host our conference basketball championship tournament. That's something we haven't been able to make happen yet, but with the help of Bowling Green Independent Schools, we're very, very close, and we hope in the next few weeks to be able to make an announcement about the possibility of hosting our 2020 conference basketball championship tournament here in Bowling Green, which will be a great addition to the events that we're able to offer here. So we're very excited about our partnership with Bowling Green Independent Schools. We appreciate all the support that we receive from the city of Bowling Green, and couldn't do without you, Mayor. Couldn't really appreciate everything that you do for us. But we've had such a great time here. My wife and I moved here back in the spring, and this is now the home of the Mid-South Conference, and our offices are here. We actually share office space with Doug Thompson in the Sporting Times. We have a lot of things that we work on together, so it's been a great partnership for us, and I just wanted to come and express how much we appreciate the support that we get from Bowling Green and the City Commission.
How many schools are in the conference now?
We have 9 full member schools, and we have, I have a hard time keeping count, 24 schools that are affiliate members. So we have a total of 33 schools that are part of the Mid-South Conference.
And they all make their way to Bowling Green for those championships?
Most of them will at some point during the year, yes, sir.
Presuming they do well enough, I guess, right?
Well, they all get to come here.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, we have a pretty strong policy that all of our teams participate in the conference championships. We feel that that's something that they deserve, and they earn the right to do that, and so we make it a priority to try to get everybody involved.
We're pleased that you're here. We're pleased that you find Bowling Green as not only a central location, but a welcoming community for you to take care of that. Thank you.
And Mayor, I brought something for you. You know, you came to our meeting that we had last June, and I gave you something, a token of our appreciation for last year, and I was going through some of the stuff that we had in our garage when we moved, and I found one for you from 2016-17, so I brought it so you could add it to your collection.
Great. I'll put those in the office. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add, on top of hosting their events here, every event has a banquet. So they're renting the Corvette Museum to host a banquet 13 times a year. And they use all local vendors, all the printing, everything is coming from Bowling Green-owned facilities. Fast Signs, Doug Thompson, the caterer, everybody is all local Bowling Green people. So we really appreciate their cooperation and really trying to make this a Bowling Green event.
Appreciate it, Mr. Ward. Thank you so much. Other awards or recognitions? All right, next we have approval of, city manager comments. Do we have any comments tonight, sir?
I have none, Mayor.
All right. Approval of minutes from our regular meeting on March 5th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nash, second by Denning. Any additions or corrections? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2019-41.
Municipal order approving the reappointments of Karen Foley and David Lee to the University District Review Committee.
Moved.
Second.
Motion by Nash, second by Denning. These next 3 items are reappointments in each case for University District Review, for our Internal Audit Committee, and for the Hopson House Commission. All of them have served well, and we appreciate their service and willingness to continue. Are there any comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2019-42.
Municipal order approving the reappointments of Brian Denning and Vivian Grice to the Bowling Green Audit Committee.
So moved.
Second.
By Nash, second by Beasley Brown. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2019-43.
Municipal order approving the reappointments of Barbara Hines and Dr. L. Michael Trapasso to the Hopson House Commission.
Moved.
Second.
Nash, second by Denning. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Resolution 2019, number 1.
Resolution encouraging the City of Bowling Green to support and participate in the 2020 census count in April of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Beasley Brown. Mr. Denning.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions pertaining to the census count, upcoming census count. Mr. City Manager, with this resolution tonight, what are we going to do to further support the census takers and all that they need in order to help the city of Bowling Green get the best count that we can?
Okay, we have formed a complete count committee. That's something new that they started, I believe, with this census, and we have that started. Commissioner Perigin is the chair of that committee. We have several staff members on that committee, and that committee is actually growing. We're inviting new parties to that every day. The purpose of that committee is to strategize how we're going to reach our community, different segments of our population, whether it be our faith-based community, our international community, so on and so on. So that group has already met once or twice. We're meeting for a 2-hour training in April. And our goal is, what happened in 2000 is we reached a 72% self-reported rate. In 2010, we were able to reach a 77% self-reporting rate, and that is where people self-report, fill out the paperwork themselves. You want as many people as possible to do that, where you don't have to go out on the street and go door to door, knocking on doors, trying to get people to, take the census. So our goal for 2020, I think we set an 80% threshold as a goal for self-reporting. And so with this committee, we're hoping to get as many members of the community involved as possible. We might get up to 50 or 60 on this committee that would represent different segments of our community, Warren County and Bowling Green. That's what this committee is set up to do. So beyond that, next year, once we get to the point where I think April 1st of 2020 is the official census day, the Census Bureau will get to work. They're already hiring people to go out and do work and paying them, I think, $14, $15 an hour. That will start soon. I hope I'm not stealing Crystal's thunder. Crystal, you can come on
Crystal,
up.
come on up. Crystal Boyd is
Help
here
me,
tonight.
help me fill in the gaps here. And so that's the point. The city will not be out any funding, to my knowledge, except for $5,000 to host these complete count committee meetings, just to offer soft drinks and this and that, just to get people to the meeting. So does that answer your question? And I'll let Crystal take it from here.
Yeah. Can we, through our public relations department, can we help them in some way to recruit individuals for that $14 an hour job? Tell me.
Kim Lancaster is on this committee and will be assisting with social media. That's up to you all. If you all want us to pursue that, we as staff kind of talked about that in senior management. We didn't know if it was the right move or not to push a second job out to our employees, but that's, if you all direct me to put that out to our employees, and we can do that. But it would be a separate outside second job to our employees to work the census.
Well, I was only thinking of our employees, but I was thinking of other individuals in the community that we may touch base with through our PR department. Now, if our employees want to do something over and above, that's left up to their department heads, but I'm talking about trying to reach everyone that would want a $14 an hour job.
Right. I'm going to let Crystal Boyette answer that question.
Is this on? Okay. Yes, we will certainly take any sort of participation and help and guidance and PR help that you can give us. We have the means and methods to provide all sorts of publicized documents about the $14 an hour, the 58 cents per mile that you drive on official business, and we would love the help to get that information out to the public. I just need to know where to send it to and who. Yeah. Okay. Kim has a copy of it.
I would love to see us take that part. I don't know, the others can speak for themselves.
We plan to advertise this and publicize this as much as possible because it's important. I don't want to get into your presentation, but there's $675 billion in grant money that's decided in a lot of cases based on your population. Your House of Representatives, number of representatives is decided by your population, your districts. So this is a very important endeavor, and we plan on taking it serious and helping out the Census Bureau in every way we can.
I have no objections at all. It's too important to the city to have the right numbers. I didn't serve on the commission at that time, but I can remember not too long ago when we felt like the count didn't accurately represent the city, and we sat around the day after talking about all the things that maybe we should have done the day before that we didn't do. So I would rather be very proactive about that.
Didn't we actually pay for a special count one time? I think we did.
believe we did.
Didn't we have a special? Yeah, I think so.
And with that special count, we got an additional area as a part of our total count that was technically not in the city limits of Bowling Green.
The 80% goal sounds really low to me. I have a problem with that for us
For numbers guy.
Yeah, for us to accept an 80% count sounds terrible to me, that we don't get our full count done. So that we're going to work on that. So, but
I think
that's just a self-reporting. But the higher we can get above that 80%, the better off we'll be, and it saves work out on the street. But Crystal can talk more about that.
Sure. The whole purpose of the Complete Count Committee is to encourage people to participate and provide them reasons why they should participate. Many people in our community and all across the U.S. don't really see the day-to-day inner workings of the census. So they don't know that, it helps provide roads, schools, community centers. They don't see it in day-to-day, everyday life. So the why me isn't exactly there. And so that's the importance of these complete count committees, is getting community figures out into the community to encourage participation. Let people know that it's safe, it's easy, it's important. And then we also want to basically show support by our local community members in saying, yes, we need your help in getting the federal funds for our own community. So that's the things that we have coming up, and Supervision has taken the lead on, and we will be training in April to really get into grassroots efforts about how to educate the population. And that's why we're starting now in 2019 and not waiting until 2020 and the day after come and go, gosh, maybe we should have done more. So that's why we're starting now, here, today.
Have done away with the 20-page long form of
So the
census, right?
Okay, good question. So we are offering for the very first time an online response option. When people start receiving the mailers in 2020 of March of 2020, it will be a postcard-sized mailer, and it will say, please go online to complete your questionnaire. However, we realize that the entire population don't have the means to pop online. So we are still offering a paper questionnaire and a telephone option. Both of those are going to be offered in a multitude of languages. If you choose to fill it out online, there's 12 languages. If you want to complete it over the telephone, we offer it in 49 different languages. So we are still offering 3 ways of completing your questionnaire. However, the long-form questionnaire that happened in 2000, where it was a telephone book thick of questions, that is no more. Our census is down to about 10 questions, give or take.
Questions from Ms.
Questions for her. I hope that citizens will participate in returning the census. There are multiple times that I talk to people who seem concerned. They read a little too much Orwell when they were in high school. They're worried about Big Brother and things like that. And, you know, anybody, you said 600 million?
$675 billion in federal funds every single year.
Raise your hand if you don't want $1 of that. And if you don't, then don't fill out your census. But if you do, and you want your community to have $1 or $2 of that 600 billion, then the census is the easiest way that you can help your community do that.
If I can actually piggyback, George Washington University did a study, and of those $675 billion, for every person that we have undercounted in the state of Kentucky, it shakes out to be around $972 that we miss out on per year. And we don't do another census for another 10 years. So if you multiply that times 10, we're almost looking at $10,000 worth of potential federal funds that we're missing out on coming back to the community. So if a household of 5 doesn't complete their questionnaire, that's $50,000 in possible federal funds that we're missing out on a community level. So dollar signs start to click.
Yeah.
And also, I thought, did I hear correctly in a previous presentation that all the information collected is not new information about you that the government didn't previously have, or you can't Google in 2 minutes and find already, right? It's pretty much public information that is already out there. So you're not, giving out new information for the first time.
That's a very accurate statement. It's general demographics. We're not asking for social security numbers. It's age, sex, date of birth, race, those types of demographic questions. Yes. We are.
Anybody does ask for your social security number, hang up on them, right?
Yes, exactly. We do hold the strongest confidentiality clause of all federal agencies. We do not share our data that's personally identifiable with any other government agencies. Data is only released every 72 years from previous censuses. So as of right now, only data that you can find from this U.S. Census Bureau starts in 1940. So if we as employees choose to share that data, we can be fined up to $250,000, go to jail for 5 years, or both. And myself, as well as all my comrades, don't find anyone's data that important to share, so we will not be disclosing any sort of information. So we do have a very tight-lipped confidentiality clause. I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
What we're doing tonight on this resolution is just encouraging everybody to support and participate in the census so that we can get a complete count. So, any other comments? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes, thank you so much. Municipal Order 2019-44.
Municipal order approving a contract through cooperative purchase with Glenn's Freedom Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram of Lexington, Kentucky, under the Kentucky State Pricing Contract for the purchase of 2 Dodge Durangos for the fire department in the total amount of $60,486.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Nash.
In this year's budget, you all approved the purchase of 2 replacement vehicles for the fire department. They are in need of 2 Dodge Durangos, and we have found them out on the Kentucky State contract pricing, and those are offered through Freedom Dodge in Lexington. Base price was $28,963, and some accessories that we need to add to them are valued at $1,280, so brings the total cost of these two trucks to $64,86, and these two trucks will be paid for out of the Fire Improvement Fund, and ask for your approval for this purchase.
We didn't have any local bidders to bid on.
The Freedom Dodge in Lexington held the state price on these state contracts, so we automatically go with that.
Is that because we don't believe we can get anything lower?
Pretty much.
It's a volume discount.
It's hard to beat. Most of the time, you won't find anything lower than the state contract price, so.
Is that including the, and I believe that it's still in effect, the local bidder, I guess that would only come in the form of
A bid.
a bid where there's points awarded.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2019-45.
Municipal order approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a motorcycle lease agreement with Motorsports of Bowling Green Incorporated for the lease of 4 standard police package Harley-Davidson motorcycles in a sum of $1 each.
So moved.
Second?
By Beasley.
This is the 15th year of leasing motorcycles, which is hard to believe. And I think you'd look across the country, any police department would just kill to have this opportunity. Bad word, but to have this opportunity to have 4 motorcycles at $1 per year. So we want to thank the Martin family for this generous gift and for continuing to support our police department. And Chief Hawkins is here if you have any questions on this deal, this arrangement. But we keep them for 2 years, and we used to keep them for 1, but it's better to keep them for 2 once we outfit them and we get more use out of them, and then we turn them in after 2 years. So.
Kind of the Martin family that began with Mr. Cornelius Martin years ago. He was an avid motorcycle rider. We appreciate their continuing support of the police department. Any other comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. First reading of ordinance BG 2019-6.
Ordinance creating franchise relating to telecommunications system. An ordinance creating and establishing for bid a non-exclusive telecommunications or related non-cable franchise for the placement of facilities for the generation, transmission, distribution, and sale of telecommunications or related non-cable services within the public rights-of-way of City of Bowling Green for 10-year duration, and providing for compliance with other relevant laws, regulations, standards, and ordinances, definitions, work, materials and construction standards, wire moving and tree trimming, indemnification and insurance, access to property and inspections, notice of filings with the Public Service Commission, no vested rights, limited assignment, notice of foreclosure and bankruptcy, cancellation or termination, violations and penalties, permitting and inspection fees, additional permitting and other requirements for substantial new construction, and bid requirements, all effective on date of passage.
That back, I didn't get.
No, thank you.
Motion by Denning,
Second.
second by Nash. Mr. Mizel.
This is something Gene's been working out with a company called North Central Telephone Company. We realized that we kind of are in need of a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise ordinance for the city. And so I'm going to let Gene kind of give you an overview, but this is basically to put that into play.
Commissioner, you have a question first?
No, I was gonna ask you to explain it to me.
Okay. As Jeff said, we've been in negotiations with North Central Telephone Co-op. I think they're headquartered out of Lafayette, Tennessee. They provide services in Allen County and Scottsville. They also now provide some services out Scottsville Road in Warren County. They have approached us about a couple of things. One is providing cable services, but I would tell you this is not that yet. We've kind of maybe moved away from that temporarily, but they are interested in providing telecommunication services, and the short definition of that is going to be internet services, maybe telephone. But again, this is not cable. I want to make sure everybody understands that. This is not a cable. It is kind of silly when you think about it. I can negotiate with a company for this, but I can't just award them. I can't just write a contract and approve it. by Kentucky law, since this is a franchise agreement, since we are giving them permission to go into our rights-of-way to install their equipment, I have to actually, the city has to actually franchise it out, which means we have to create a franchise by ordinance. That's what we're starting tonight, 2 readings on it. After that, I will get with Maryland. We will actually send out the advertisement for bids from any company that's interested in responding to this. This is not exclusive, so if more than one company wants to respond for this franchise, they can. If they do, then we'll review those. We'll come back with the second ordinance, at that point awarding the franchise agreement. The most recent one similar to this was a few years ago with Atmos Gas. We had to go through the same process with them as well. Jeff can probably help me remember 20 years ago, we did something similar with a company called Bluegrass Network, who wanted to lay cable lines, internet stuff, through some of our downtown streets. So we had to go through the same process with them. Basically, what this agreement does, it kind of sets out the terms and conditions for them using our rights-of-way. This does not give them permission to go on any other city property other than go in our rights-of-way. We do have language in them making sure they comply with all of our street requirements, street cuts. I did run this by Public Works to make sure they were okay and acceptable to the language we put in. We don't want a company, if you followed, I think I saw one this week when Google pulled out of Louisville, they're now having some street issues because apparently they buried some of their lines like 2 inches underground and didn't use asphalt to cover them. Not a relation here tonight, but now Louisville's having some street issues with Google pulling out. So we do have language in here requiring whoever gets this bid to comply with our street requirements. If they do want to go on POs of other people, for example, BGMU, that's a separate issue. They will have to do PO attachment agreements with BGMU to do that. But we do set out, of course, the conditions, technical, we want to know when they come in a little bit about the company, about their technical ability to put their stuff into our rights-of-way. Of course, we've got indemnification and insurance requirements that we're going to have them do. To make sure you understand, this is not a fee generator for the city because at this point, we are still taking what's called excise tax of whatever the General Assembly did several years ago.
Telecommunications tax.
Yeah, the telecommunications excise tax, where they initially took away the city's ability to establish a franchise fee. The Kentucky League of Cities, along with some cities around the state, challenged that, end up winning that argument before the Kentucky Supreme Court. So now the city of Bowling Green, we have an option. If we want to, with cable as well, we can go back and start charging a franchise fee, or we can continue to receive the money we're receiving from the state each year. Right now, I think Finance and Jeff believe that receiving the money from the state is still the best option for us, so that's what we're still doing. But we did put language in here that if we ever change our mind and decided to establish a franchise fee, that they would pay a 5% franchise fee based on their gross income in the city of Bowling Green. Again, if we ever change our mind and decide to do that. Trying to think what else I wrote down. I think that's pretty much most of the thing. The only thing we're doing tonight is creating this franchise agreement. Again, it's not exclusive. It's not cable. And we will advertise it here after you do the second reading, and we'll see what kind of responses. I'm sure we'll get one response. One good thing we did put in there's a $6,000 application fee, because if you read this title, you may think, that's a big title for me to do. I would tell you, I didn't write most of this ordinance. There's an attorney around the state that she specializes in telecommunications and cable. So she's been helping us for the last several months and working out this franchise agreement and getting the terms agreeable to both parties. So we do have a $6,000 franchise fee as part of this application to help us recover our advertising costs and also help us recover some of our legal fees that we have incurred so far. Does that help you?
Yeah, sure did.
All right, thank you.
Comments or questions?
I have a question. So you mentioned that the bidding was, non-exclusive, but then you said we're going to award the bid. So is it going to, we can award it to more than one company, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as long as when we get bids in, we'll review them to make sure they're in compliance with the ordinance. And all those that are in compliance will bring back before you requesting the city award the franchises. So it could be more than one.
And once they are awarded a franchise here, do they then go across the entire city, or can they just pick and choose where they want to go?
But telecommunications, one of the things by federal law and federal regulation, I cannot compel them to go citywide. So they can pick and choose with this particular one which way they want to go. Cable, we have a little bit more flexibility in cable. Right now, the current cable franchise requires the company to go citywide. That's one of the issues, I guess, in renegotiations, or if a new cable company comes into town. You know, if we decide to waive that requirement, then once we waive that requirement for one cable company, we waive it for all. You know, I guess it's, you know, federal law is really, I guess, tricky, or that's a good word on this stuff. If we had another company came in and wanted to do cable and we awarded a cable franchise, by operational law, then they can provide telecommunication services as well. They would not need a separate franchise agreement for telecommunications because they can provide that as part of their cable, just like our current one does now. They provide both, but they provide that under their cable franchise. So if we were to get another company in who wanted to provide cable services, you know, they would have to comply with our cable ordinance. But back to your basic first question, you know, I don't know how many responses we'll get, but it is not exclusive, and if we get multiple ones and they all comply with what we ask for, then we will come back asking for multiple awards.
Comments or questions?
And one of those could possibly be a company that want to give cable franchise to, right?
Not under this ordinance. This ordinance excludes the provision of cable. We will have a separate cable ordinance because in the cable ordinance, we put in different regulations that we have the ability to request under cable that we cannot for these. For example, requiring citywide coverage, requiring a local office. Some items like that, for cable ordinances, we could require that, or at least we could try to get that from the cable companies as part of the negotiations. With telecommunications, I cannot request that. Okay.
We will one day.
Other comments? Call the roll.
Denning. Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Municipal Order 2019-46.
Municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute a consent to sell beer agreement with White Squirrel Brewery LLC related to a special event to be held at Riverfront Park on June 29th, 2019.
So moved.
Second. Nash, second by
We received this special event permit application from the Southwest Kentucky Mountain Biking Association. They're wanting to do a special event on June 29th down at the Riverfront Park. They noted Weldon Pete, but it's the adjacent part of our park. Since they are a microbrewery and hold that license, it allows them to sell the beer at the festivals, but this is our park, so we felt like we needed permission, give them a permission or a consent to sell the beer at this special event, and that's what we've got before you. Gene worked on this language and this consent agreement that's in your packet, so Gene can answer questions, hopefully, if you have any on this. This is different than your sidewalk leases that we do around downtown.
Go ahead.
It's only because it's a different kind of license.
Right.
This substitutes for our lease agreement. They have to have a lease agreement to get a special license on those others. This just substitutes for that since they don't have to turn that in.
Mine is related to the event, somewhat related to this municipal order, but it's driven about litter and who is responsible for cleaning up after the event, whether they're cups or cans or anything else, especially so close to the river. Although, let's be honest, any trash eventually ends up in the river no matter where you throw it down.
Well, this one's, I think, a little bit unique and different, and maybe Brent may want to come up too, because in my understanding, I think I'm correct, the applicant for the special event, as part of the conditions, for them, they are required to
Number 6.
clean up after themselves after they rent. and one of our parks and stuff. So this one's what makes this one a little bit different. We've got a special event organizer who's actually having given permission to use the park. Now they're bringing in, this beer server to do that. But I think the ultimate responsibility for this particular one is going to be the special event organizer. And that's going to be part of the conditions of getting the special event permit approved by the city.
This agreement specifies under number 6 that it's White Squirrel Brewery shall be solely responsible for the maintenance of the area and shall take all necessary action to keep Riverfront Park free from litter. So,
And I read that and I see it. I guess my question is bigger than that area. So when I think of that area, I think of like a beer garden. I think of it being roped off or fenced off in some way, and that they're responsible for cleaning up inside that specified area, when in reality, litter ends up in many more places than just that defined area. I park downtown. Where I park related to my office is in the middle of numerous establishments that sell alcohol, and every Friday, Saturday, and Monday morning, we clean up our parking lot from all the debris that is in there, and we don't have a bar in our parking lot. And this will be the same way. I support it 100%. I just want to make sure that we're cleaning up after ourselves, and that if they're not cleaning up after themselves, that the taxpayers aren't having to take on the burden of us sending employees down there to clean up after them.
But as Jeff said, I put language in this agreement, at least for the beer sales, that they would try to monitor and pick up after themselves. But I go back to what I said a minute ago, I think the ultimate responsibility for cleaning up the whole area, and we call this Riverfront. Their application actually said Weldon Pete. I think they're actually going, but we call it Riverfront. But the ultimate party is going to be responsible for making sure that park is cleaned up after the special event is going to be the special event organizer.
In this case, the Southern Kentucky Mountain Biking Association is the one who participated in creating the trails down there, so they have a vested interest in that park to keep it clean, and we'll work very hard to do
and if it
so.
doesn't go well, you can deny them next year.
Oh, and please don't anybody interpret my comments or questions being anti this event, anti the brewery, anti the Mountain Biking Association. It's not that. It's fresh on my mind after Dana and I Dana much more than I participated in litter abatement over the weekend. And just the amount of litter that's in this town is astounding sometimes. I want to make sure we're doing our part sitting here to make sure we're not making that worse.
Please call the roll.
Denning. Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes, first reading of ordinance BG 2019-7.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 0.7002 acre from HB Highway Business to RM4 Multifamily Residential located at 3885 Old Nashville Road, Loop Number 1, presently owned by Elijah Properties, LLC.
Second?
Second by Nash. This is a unanimous recommendation from the full planning commission of 12 members for this rezoning. Are there any comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Ordinance, first reading of ordinance BG 2019-8.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 6.5 acres from GB General Business to PUD Planned Unit Development located at 618 Lovers Lane, presently owned by Preparo 2 Bowling Green LLC.
So moved.
Second?
Second by Nash. Other unanimous vote recommended from planning and zoning for the rezoning, and we appreciate Mr. Childers getting them inside the city limits. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. First reading of ordinance BG 2019, number 9.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a portion of a tract of land containing 0.2763 acre from RS1A Single Family Residential to GB General Business located at 0 Memphis Junction Road, presently owned by B&B Cleaning Company Incorporated, care of Bruce Zachary.
So moved?
Other unanimous vote from planning and zoning for rezoning. Is there any comment or question? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. First reading of ordinance BG 2019-10.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 14.20 acres from HB Highway Business to LI Light Industrial located at 0 Nashville Road, presently owned by 979 LLC, care of Tommy Hunt.
Move.
Second.
Denning, second by Nash, and the fourth unanimous vote from planning and zoning. Are there any comments and questions?
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
I don't know if it's for Ben or Public Works, but there was some talk about the public road and how there was joint ownership of it. And I wasn't clear from the public hearing if it is going to become a public road at the end of the construction or if it's going to remain private.
Well, I'll start, and then I'll let them add to if they need to. So currently, right now, it's just a private ingress-egress easement shared by the lots. I think their intention is to develop that as a public street at some point and then have the city accept that. But currently, it is private. So that once they go through the development process, they'll have to go through the whole subdivision process, and we will have our comprehensive development review process where Public Works and everybody else will review it and make sure it meets all the requirements. So at this time, it's private.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. First reading of ordinance BG 2019-11.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning tracts of land containing 39.11 acres from AG Agriculture, RM3 Multifamily Residential, HB Highway Business and F floodplain to RM4 Multifamily Residential, HB Highway Business and F floodplain located at 0 Veterans Memorial and 2337 Russellville Road, presently owned by Keystone Development Group LLC, care of Matthew Tabor.
Move.
Second.
Nash. This is a recommendation from planning and zoning on a split vote, 5-4, and the Bowling Green vote was 2-2. Did you have any comments that you wanted to add?
Mayor, good evening, Commissioners. Chris Davenport on behalf of Keystone Development Group. Necessarily don't really have any comments. I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any. I guess I will say that this was a somewhat unique case in that it was brought before the Planning Commission. The commissioners decided to table it at the first meeting with some concerns or some questions they wanted to have shored up. So came back before them primarily on an issue of uniformity, and a number of development plan conditions were added to ensure uniformity in the development. So I'm happy to expound on that if you have any questions, but ultimately it was approved for the flume change, which is now final, and then also the zone change, the request now being compliant with the flume designation.
Comments or questions?
Chris, I understand that on Veterans, there's going to be a stoplight there at the ingress and egress.
Correct. There was, Commissioner Denny, there was what's called a signal warrant study. I think I got that correct, but that was performed by the Kentucky State Transportation Cabinet to see if this development will necessitate or warrant that stoplight. The results of that came back in the affirmative. So that will aid greatly in the transportation and the routes of the traffic out there. That was the answer to the study. So that's part of this application.
Tell us, Mr. Davenport, where that will be. Do they know yet?
Not specifically, but it will be aligned. It will be aligned with the boulevard. So if you have in front of you the application, you'll see a concept plan that shows the development, and you'll see the major. It's a boulevard or thoroughfare there that will serve the development. It will be aligned, obviously, with that thoroughfare. That will be served by the light.
Commissioner Denning showed me a line that I could look at, and that was going to be one of the next questions I ask is, there is a planned connection to the neighborhood that is behind it?
There is, and that's been a recent topic of conversation with many applications before the Planning Commission. the current zoning ordinance that's been enacted by all the municipalities in Warren County require that. So the Planning Commission, and I think I would, with safety say, in the last 18 to 24 months, have taken the position that the ordinance requires it, and they don't entertain, we used to have this process where an applicant would say, well, we won't connect anymore. The Planning Commission doesn't entertain those notions. And frankly, at least at the second hearing, wherein I represented Keystone, there was no opposition, aside from maybe a letter from, if I recall right, an owner that lives somewhere else had sent a letter in. Other than that, there was no opposition to that connection. There was testimony, Commissioner Nash, at the hearing that, and I believe it was probably by Ms. Hurt, but one of the staff members testified that in reality, that connection will alleviate, and I don't have the map in front of me, but traffic flowing, I think it's the Spring Hill subdivision, out, I guess that would be north, to get to Veterans Memorial up like where the Domino's light is. That there'll be more traffic will be prevented from driving through the neighborhood that will be added to the neighborhood, if that makes sense. That's what the transportation folks, and frankly, that only makes sense.
Yeah, okay. The connection is in the middle of the neighborhood, so in order for people to get to this boulevard that comes out of Spring Hill, they're going to have to drive through a section of the neighborhood because it really kind of divides it right through the middle.
I guess the specific testimony, Commissioner Nash, was that it's anticipated that the neighborhood will use this connection more than this development will use their neighborhood.
Got it.
If that makes sense.
That makes more sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I misunderstood and I apologize. What is the particular barrier that will be established between this development and the existing neighborhood, if there is such a barrier?
So Commissioner Nash, you'll find that in, I'm looking for the correct development plan condition. You'll find that in DPC number 9. There was testimony that the back portion of this property is rather dense. There's a rather dense tree line there, and the developer obligated itself to maintain that with a 10-foot width of 10 feet, and maintain the trees that are there currently with the 12 inches or greater in caliper size. Basically, the trees of substance that are there will remain there to maintain that barrier.
Right. And my next question, I guess, would be for Ben. If I understood Mr. Davenport right, the flume was amended?
That's correct.
As I understand it, there are only 3 conditions under which the flume can be amended. You taught me this. And under which one of those 3 conditions was the flume amended?
Be the third bullet, that the proposed use is clearly compatible with the existing surrounding development as demonstrated by the applicant. And then it goes on. I can read the rest if you wish, but.
No. And so I have the packet in front of me, but for the sake of people who don't have the packet in front of them, what type of housing is going to be built on this property?
So if you look at the left hand of the exhibit, if you will, there'll be some larger 24-unit, 3-story multifamily structures. And then the right-hand part of the plan, if you will, is 4- and 8-plex 2-story development. And then the front facing veterans will be commercial development.
And how much of Spring Hill neighborhood, if you know, is multifamily?
Not have that information in front of me. It is zone multifamily, but I believe most of it is single family.
And so when you talk compatibility with multifamily, can you give me an explanation of what you mean by that?
So here's where it gets interesting. So generally speaking, most of the time in planning in general, you have commercial, typically a buffer is multifamily to the single family. So a lot of times you insert that multifamily development to buffer. Here, we have found some resistance to that just in the development world. So when we look at compatible or incompatible uses as far as transportation connections, typically we call a difference out between the multifamily and the single-family use. But then the zoning ordinance provides and prescribes, if you will, what a suitable buffer between those incompatible uses are, and that is a 40-foot distance between any, at least minimum, between the property line and any structure to be put on it. And then additionally, there is a landscaping buffer that is provided that is any combination of deciduous and evergreen trees and/or a fence can substitute those evergreen trees.
And all those conditions are met.
Those conditions have been met.
Mr. Davenport referred to the connectivity. No, I was just going to you. I apologize. Referred to the connectivity, and I agree with him that that is the standard. How do we justify to people who are living in existing neighborhoods that part of the city's plan is neighborhood preservation, but yet we continue to allow connectivity, not just this project, but other projects as well?
Obviously, it's one of the least popular things that we face, but I would say connections are generally a good, solid planning principle. So when you have connectivity, I think that is good for the grid system, the transportation system. Rather than just having a road, it's a transportation system. So in this case specifically, with the addition of the traffic light, the 4 connections to other roads, it is considered a good transportation system, which I think is part of what your Public Works recommended, as well as KYTC recommended, is this is a better situation for connectivity. So to answer that simply is, if you have a dead-end road, that was put there to then extend development. So I guess it's intended for connectivity, not neighborhood exclusivity. And so just because you have a dead-end street now doesn't necessarily mean it was intended for you to have an exclusive neighborhood that's not connected to anything else. Again, from a planning perspective only, and there's many other factors, density is good for the city. It's easier to serve more people at a lower cost with density. Same thing, connectivity goes along with that. Reduces vehicles miles traveled, increases access for public safety, all of those reasons.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of those. I guess I'm looking at it from a volume of traffic standpoint.
Sure.
And I like connectivity in Bowling Green too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most people do until all the cars go by their house.
Absolutely.
And so I agree with what Mr. Davenport says, that this may alleviate some traffic going through the neighborhood. I am concerned about the amount of traffic that may go through the neighborhood. Having lived in this area before, not in Spring Hill, but close by, the light at Veterans Memorial and Russellville Road is a long light. Especially long when you're running behind and it's rush hour and you think, I'm gonna find a way around this light. And I did live in Whispering Hills when the connection was built at the back of Whispering Hills, and I lived on Whispering Hills Boulevard, which became a major cut through for people wanting to avoid that light. And the amount of traffic that went by did not bother me. The speed with which that traffic went by was concerning to me, because I had a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old at the time, 2-year-old at the time, that we were living there, and I'm concerned about how we continue to justify neighborhood preservation while we continue to allow volume of cars, and I realize nobody can control the speed of a car except the person who's driving it, and maybe some level of enforcement. I have no objection to this project at all. I think it's needed in the community. I think it's in a reasonable location. I'm concerned about the connectivity.
Therein lies the sometimes dilemma or issue with the balance of regulations, where we try to create a balance of regulations that's for the greater good and not necessarily for one specific either group of people or neighborhood. So I think that's the difficult decision that you honestly have to make tonight is trying to figure out is this that meet that reasonable balance. And so the zoning ordinance requirements are minimums, and so the development plan conditions try to add to those minimums to make it more compatible. So I think that is the difficult decision that you often have before you, controversial one sometimes, if you will. And so that's kind of left to you to ultimately decide what's compatible and is it a reasonable fit for the city of Bowling Green. So how do you make that fit in with when you have those connections? Yes, it does increase traffic. Speed is an enforcement issue, and then there's some other design traffic calming issues that we've talked about in other areas that maybe we need to look at as the MPO and work with Public Works on. But then those buffers, the tree buffers, the landscaping, we have pretty good regulations there compared to what I've seen in other parts of the states of trying to buffer some of that, especially when we retain some of the large mature trees, and then part of the requirement they will have to supplement those holes or the in-between with evergreen trees to kind of create that barrier. So it's a long way of answering.
Yeah, it's my problem, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Would the commission entertain any traffic abatement in addition to this application?
I'm not sure that we can address that during planning and zoning. We'll have to get some.
May want to let, you want to get up and address the question too, just be up to them whether they even consider such a thing, and I'm not sure we can at this point.
Well, I guess what I was asking, if I could, just for a minute, Mr. Davenport, is traffic abatement in the area of Spring Hill neighborhood. I don't know how I can continue to, it's on all kinds of documents that the city of Bowling Green puts out about neighborhood preservation and neighborhood protection, how I can continue to vote in a progressive way, which I want to do, about a growing community, and we need this kind of housing, but at the same time balance that against the individuals who have made an investment and purchased a home, or even if they're renting a home. Home ownership doesn't really make a difference to me, but how I balance the two, if we're not looking, I'm not looking for the developer to do traffic abatement in Spring Hill. I feel like if our goal as a city is neighborhood preservation, then it falls on us to do so.
So, I may let Public Works, are you asking, even after this is approved, if the city would itself look at other, ideas, transportation, traffic related beyond this? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a question for me then.
Are you referring to like roadblocks like we did in Shawnee, or
No, I'm not referring to closing the road.
traffic enforcement from?
Ways to reduce the speed with which cars travel through the existing neighborhood, if in fact our goal, as stated on many city documents, is neighborhood preservation. Nothing destroys a neighborhood like the speed with which cars. I don't think it's volume of cars that bother people. I think it's the speed with which they drive. Commissions ago, voted to eliminate speed bumps because we found one study that said that they weren't effective, but yet people ask for them all the time and they feel like they're effective. And we have to find a better balance to what we're doing, because I want projects like this to be approved. I want developers to find Bowling Green a good place to develop, but we have to balance that the people who are in Spring Hill have been there for some time, and the city owes them something if we're going to continue to approve the volume and the speed with which we know cars are going to drive by their homes.
Yeah, I would agree that it is very difficult in these decisions where I think, this is going to help bring in a type of housing that we need, and the density is good and something that we need for in terms of infill. But the impact on the quality of life of the neighborhood there, it's, to me, what we gain in connectivity, the folks who live along that route are, losing in terms of their quality of life and even their longevity of life, because there are studies that show if you have the neighborhood street is not walkable, it's too dangerous, then you are not going to get out and walk your dog, you're not going to walk. And then that, we know that is directly connected to how long you live, is how active you are. So I find myself in these situations where I don't have a problem with the development. I have a problem with the way that we as a city are come alongside of development and how we make sure that it is a win-win both for our city and development and a win for our neighborhoods. And I think if we can put into our neighborhoods that are being impacted by growth, just like we're asking our developers to put in sidewalks, that we commit to coming alongside of it in a way that is creating complete streets with traffic calming type of engineering and ways to make sure that these families who live on these streets that become cut-throughs and no longer safe for their families, how are we going to commit to saying we love growth? How do we make sure that's a win for our neighborhoods too? And I would love to see us explore ways to do that in a tangible way.
Yes, from a staff point of view, for clarification, are we talking about things like more stop signs in Spring Hill, a stop sign at every block?
We've
I
had
don't know.
discussions about what different traffic calming things that you can create. And I don't know if you're able to describe that, Greg, but there are tons of things we can do, like landscaping and things like that help.
Evening. Generally, with you're talking about speed mainly and traffic calming. Generally, what plays more into speed is the driver comfort. So if they feel like they can go faster, if the road's wider, for example, they tend to go faster. So you look at just an example of that, reduction in pavement width. Look at Covington, where the sidewalk was put in, where part of the road was. And so did the speed actually decrease because of that? Well, if you have people parked and you have to weave around, certainly it did. Other things you were talking about, if you put a sidewalk in, maybe you take away some of the pavement on one side of the road. You also, when you do that, you take away some on-street parking. So there are all kinds of, it's not just you can do one thing and prescribe one thing and it fixes the problem. It's generally you look at it holistically and what would work for this particular place if that's an issue. And we're assuming, again, that speed is going to increase because it's a connection with the signal. Not necessarily is that always true. So it's more about how safe, and people get in a hurry, they get behind, they cut through lights, and they try to get to a quicker place to get to where they're going, certainly. And you can't account for that. But mainly, it's the comfort of the driver, how fast they feel like they can go without running into somebody, without, hitting a parked car, et cetera, et cetera. So every place is different when it comes to traffic calming. Some places, you will see university towns, even like Western, that put in curved roadways, chicanes, I guess they call them, in the road, where physically you have to slow down. It's like roundabouts. You have to slow down when you go around a roundabout compared to a green light when you go through an intersection. So I guess I'm saying all that just to say that it depends on the situation and it depends on the issues that you're having. A lot of times you can't diagnose a condition before you have it. So that may be where we're at with this as well. So again, that's a holistic statement that we'll have to see.
And I've seen a concept called complete streets that some other cities have implemented, where you're putting in sidewalks and a bike lane. And so again, you're reducing the space for vehicles so that naturally slows them down.
Right. And we're putting in a complete street downtown around the square. It's going to be a complete street with bike lanes, et cetera. So again, it all depends on what you're trying to do.
Striping, is that an option too? Doesn't sometimes that
Striping
help
is an option. Again, it's the perception that the roadway's narrowed. Striping with a marked bicycle lane could be
or a shared bicycle lane could also do the same thing. So there are options. Yeah.
I would love us to explore those options.
I think I just have to echo Ben's comments on the connectivity part. You know, it's going to probably increase traffic for some, but it'll decrease traffic for a lot as well too, on either end of where signals are now, on Veterans and on Russellville Road. So,
If allowed and if feasible and if legal, when we are considering projects like this where there's going to be connectivity to existing neighborhoods, I would like to see what some of those suggestions might be as it relates not to the development, but to the area that the development is connecting to going forward. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not looking for a thorough study. I'm looking for, in this particular area, the streets are already this width, so maybe striping doesn't work, but something else does work. I think we can balance both. I really do. But we can't, I don't think that it sends the right message when we say we're going to do one and then we'll get back to you on the other, and then maybe we don't get back.
Any other comments or questions?
I had a couple questions. So when I'm looking at the proposed development on that front 3-story building on the left of my paper, it looks like it's in the 100-year flood zone. And I was just checking to see if you all had updated it or talked about.
So in order to build on that, Commissioner Beasley Brown, there will have to be enough dirt moved that's out of the floodplain. So that's fairly typical on a development this size. We depict where we think we'll be able to put buildings when we do grading and move dirt. But obviously, we got to get it out of the floodplain or we can't get a building permit for it, so.
Do you know the distance between these back buildings that are right next to the neighborhood, what that distance is?
Oh, but I do believe that Ben kind of spoke to that earlier when he talked about the ordinance and the 40 feet from the property line. That is all in the ordinance. So the process is when the developer goes to request those building permits, the city staff looks to see where the building footprints are and do they meet those minimum setbacks, which I'm assuming is 40 feet. He knows that a lot better than I do.
And do these 3-story apartments that are right next to the neighborhood, do they have balconies facing the neighborhood backyards?
Wouldn't to the backyards, I don't think. There were some renderings. I don't know if we have all those. Yeah. And Mr. Peterson says the minimum in the ordinance is 25 feet.
So those are balconies?
I'm not sure those are, if you actually look, these are basically just design elements. Those are windows. So the idea being those columns is a design like a facade to give that appearance. But at least on this rendering, those are windows, not doors. So,
Is it an option you guys were considering?
I would not think, this is a similar product to what you see at the Southern, at a lot of different places. Typically, you wouldn't have a balcony towards the rear of the property, so.
But have they considered having balconies
Ms. Beasley
facing
Brown,
that?
I don't know. Mr. Tabor, could you speak to that? Do you know?
John Williams is strong them, and I think there might be some balconies facing the tree line, but it's a dense tree line, and like they said earlier, we haven't had any objections from any neighbors. So, and we actually went around and knocked on some doors and talked to them, and they're all excited about their property possibly going up in value. So, we haven't, there may be some balconies. I can't tell you until it's completely laid out and we're approved.
I can say this, Commissioner, it's not prohibited in the DPCs or any part of the application. That was never discussed, that was never brought up with staff or anyone else. So if I
Yeah.
sound uninformed on that, it's because I'm uninformed on that.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just looking at, these are just questions that
Sure.
I didn't know about, because the only issue I've seen in our city or not only, but one of them have been single-family homes that are one story next to three-story apartment buildings that are really close. And if you stand in that person's backyard, it is really an ominous experience. And then you have people on balconies that are looking down into your backyard, and so you no longer have any privacy. And I'm glad to know that there's a dense tree line, because hopefully that will limit from that feeling. But I just, the two-story, I don't think is going to be a problem at all. I'm just worried about the three-story in terms of how close these are, if they're going to be able to have that same experience of no longer having any privacy in their backyard, because people on a third-floor apartment building are going to be looking down into their backyard.
When you see a development plan like this or a concept plan, I'll just remind the commissioners, that's not necessarily where every building's going to go. The location is the product of the engineering, the grading, what they find on site during those processes that we don't know right now. But the location, as Ben pointed out, the building office will look at the ordinance and see what the minimum setbacks are and make sure that there's nothing in those setbacks.
And I just had one more question about the wetland. And so, Ben, is it okay if I ask a question just about wetlands in general?
If it was brought up during the meeting, you can. If you have other,
Even though it's a question about the application around the wetland part?
if it's part of the record, then we can follow up on that.
So is the wetland part of the record?
I don't remember that discussion. I watched the video.
Part of the,
Is it in the application? Okay, go ahead.
so I just had a question around the wetland and development, next to a wetland like this, and in terms of the impact on the wetland.
So kind of, this is the use of the land and whether the zone can change, and they use the land as they propose. The next phase then would be the actual engineering and design, where they would then go in and actually lay out the site and define where the buildings are going to set and how that will interact with the surrounding environment. So at that point in time is when they have to do the drainage plans and the stormwater plans and all of that, which are reviewed by Matt and Greg and their staffs, and then those comments are provided back. So I'm assuming none of that's probably been looked at in depth at this point, and the design. But that will be kind of done at that next phase. But they will, Matt can probably speak more to what specific regulations apply or not. But essentially, they're not allowed to adversely affect the current environment there, and not allowed to impact it any more than what is already existing for those current conditions. So that's kind of that next step of design.
And I heard them talk about wanting to actually improve it, so it's not a negative question. I just wanted to check in about that particular part of it.
Oftentimes, that does end up as a result that the drainage and that type of stuff is actually improved by the development rather than the other way.
All my questions.
Get ready to vote. Just remind the commission that we're voting based on the record here, so all our discussion about traffic calming in adjacent neighborhoods is important. It's not a part of our vote this evening. Any other comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Denning.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Beasley Brown.
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. Going to go into a work session on Riverview Golf Course, and while you're setting up, I'll be right back. Okay, thank you for giving us just a moment. We'll return to the working session part of our meeting with a discussion of the golf course at what's now called Riverview.
Y'all will allow me to make just a few opening comments from my seat. I would like to, and forgive me if I read a lot of these, but just want to make sure we're covering all the bases. Most of you will recall that we discussed the Riverview Golf Course at the September 25th BOC retreat, and at that meeting there was a consensus to release a request for proposals, what we call an RFP, to gauge interest from outside parties in regard to taking over the golf course, either for golf or other purposes. As we discussed at our January 25th BOC retreat, the RFP was issued in October. We got it back in first part of January. The proposal was, there was only one proposal that was for a 36-hole pay-to-play disc golf course on the property. The proposal was determined not to be in the best interest of the city to accept as it was proposed, and we rejected it. However, we have stayed in contact with that party and have had further discussions for other possibilities on the property. There have been no other offers or outside parties interested in the property to this point. At the January 25th retreat, we also discussed the fact that if the property and the golf course is allowed to go fallow and not maintained for any lengthy period of time, it would likely be lost for good, which could result in bigger problems of becoming a haven for unwanted activities at that park. And we have to maintain it at some standard one way or the other, so keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is only half of the property and the course down there can be built upon due to the landfill and the floodplains. And so at the January retreat, you all gave us kind of the go-ahead or the permission to explore the feasibility and to develop cost estimates for improvements and changes to the course that could potentially reignite interest to the facility and increase revenues while hopefully reducing operating costs. Although golf rounds nationwide have seen a decline in the last few years, there have been some other non-traditional golf venues like Topgolf over the last couple of years that have helped spur new interest to the game and made people want to get back out on the courses and play more golf. That's an article I've read recently. National Golf Foundation put out. It's also created more diversity in the participation, more women, more youth getting interested in the game. As you know, the city's population is obviously still growing. We talked about that with the census coming up. There's lots of potential for attracting new participants such as WKU students and luring high school golf teams back to Riverview, along with the general public, if there were to be improvements made to the course. There are 5 local high school boys teams, and I believe there's 4 high school girls golf teams in the area that need courses to play practice rounds on and matches after school and weekends. And I believe there's limited opportunity for high school teams to play at our 2 local country clubs. Furthermore, when there are big scrambles and tournaments going on at crosswinds that require closing that course to the public, the only other option is Paul Walker if there is no Riverview. If you want participation to return to the golf course at Riverview, we have to improve the course by replacing the greens. No one wants to play dead, burnt-out greens in late July, and after that, in those later months of the year, there's just no chance of recovering those greens with the hot, dry weather that we usually have July, August, September, on into October. Virtually, this course, Riverview, has been on life support for a long time, and we've done that in order to cut costs to the bare bone. We have accomplished the elimination of any general fund subsidy to golf the last 6 years. Katie can correct me on that, but I think that's correct. But this feat may have been all done to achieve a fictitious artificial goal that golf, unlike any other parks program or facility, should be self-supporting. I don't know the answer to that. But there is another thing to point out, and that is golf is still the only, one of the few Parks and Rec programs, and it is the only parks program that generates the most revenues for parks. Riverview is a 50-year-old course with 50-year-old greens, with a 50-year-old irrigation system that no longer works. We can't keep doing the same thing as we have been doing and expect a different result. The reluctance to make any improvements to Riverview has led us to this fork in the road that we're now facing, and a final decision about the future of one of the most scenic 9-hole courses around this area, and we need to make the decision. You know, I have a little personal bias. I grew up playing this course. I have a lot of fond memories of the course back in the day, and so I'm trying to be neutral in my presentation.
You're not working it out very well.
I think you're doing fine.
The staff and I feel that a turnaround is certainly possible, but we do not believe it can be accomplished without a new feature or attraction such as a driving range alongside a renovated 9-hole course. There is no longer a public driving range in Warren County. The closest one is in Franklin at Kenny Perry's golf course, and if there ever were a time to build a range, it would be now. The land is there, and the revenue potential is exciting to look at with a short potential payback period of 5 years or less. We've looked at the numbers. We've looked at other driving ranges, what they produce. We've looked at what former driving ranges have produced, and the numbers are there. I know this is a major decision that must be carefully considered, but time is obviously vital. Spring is here. Summer will also be here very soon. And if there were to be a consensus tonight to reinvest and revitalize Riverview with a driving range, work would have to start as soon as possible to capture as much of the prime season for golf as possible. And that's May through October. Mike Mitchum is here. He's our Parks and Golf Maintenance Superintendent. Originally, Brent Belcher was going to be here, but he's run into some health issues today, and I apologize for that, and he apologizes. And so I'm kind of pitching in kind of for him. Me and Mike are tag teaming on this presentation. And so Mike's going to give you the slides here in just a minute. They're going to show some cost estimates of building a new driving range, as well as estimates for converting what it would cost to convert to a par 3 course. And in addition to that, we've also figured out some cost of reconfiguring our existing 9-hole course that we think it looks like, according to the numbers that Mike will show, would be probably less costly and less invasive to coexist alongside the driving range. So I think what we need to do is let Mike do his presentation, and then you guys can answer or ask questions, make comments after he's finished. So Mike, if you don't care to step up. Thank you.
Good evening. I guess I do get to play Brent tonight. Just a little bit shorter, quite a bit fatter, and considerably more nervous. But at any rate, we'll try to get through it. There may be some redundancy here between what Jeff said and what we have in the slides, but we'll go through them, maybe talk about them briefly. Brent had put together just a real brief history of the Hopson Grove Golf Course. That's what it was originally called in 1969 when it was first built. The fire destroyed the Pro Shop cart barn in 2002, and the new Pro Shop was built and unveiled in 2005, and that's when it was renamed to the Riverview Golf Course. So this golf course has a long history in that community. My understanding is it was built by 5 gentlemen, and based on what Jeff was saying, with the fact that we're working off of greens and tees and an irrigation system that's 50 years old, to be honest with you, I feel like the course has fared really well for 50 years. And Jeff already covered the request proposal. The proposal that we received was deemed unacceptable for our purposes, but we did go into sealed negotiations, or negotiations after sealed biddings with the people that made the proposal, and conversations are still going on with them to this day. There's very much a possibility of a partnership, if you will, with the course, maybe even some management, staffing, helping out with staffing, where they could run a portion of the course, also run their events from the same location, which would reduce staff cost, which would help with our overall cost of running the course if we decided to keep it open. This graph is a little bit hard to see. As far back as Brent could go to track history was 1991 as far as rounds played, and up through the current year, last year, 2018. One thing I found interesting from what you see there, there's never been a year that it was under 10,000 rounds of play. Now, if you'll stop and think about a year's time, averaging, say, 12, 13,000 rounds of play, but only open about 270 days a year, that's about 50 rounds a day. So that's quite a bit of traffic. So obviously there's somebody that does like having the course there. The next slide relates to the revenues that the course has produced. It's always seemed to stay 150,000 a year plus. One thing I think I will add here, we're proposing tonight the possibility of building a driving range. In talking with people that's had them and researching data, driving ranges can easily produce $150,000 to $200,000 of revenue a year. So if you were to add that and in some fashion keep either a 9-hole course or a new par 3 course between the driving range revenue and the golf course revenue, you're potentially looking at $300,000 or more a year. Yes. Yeah, but going back to that slide, especially in the rounds of play, I think the last 2 years we closed it in the winter. The 2 years prior to that, Walker was closed, Riverview's remained open. And that's kind of reflected in that graph, but without going into a lot of detail and taking a lot of time. But we do close bad weather and in the winter. So, you know, the other courses, Paul Walker and Crosswinds course remains open any day that's feasible to play. The next is an aerial view of where we're proposing to build the driving range. If you can see, the yellow area is currently the number 8 fairway, from number 8 tee to, or from number, it's number 8 fairway from the number 8 tee to the number 8 green. So in that area right there, which would be real close to the pro shop, we easily have an area of 350 yards long that won't require any kind of earthwork as far as leveling, grading, or anything like that. There'll be some tree clearing that would need to be done. So essentially all the earthwork that would be required to build this driving range would be the tee box. We would need to net it, in our opinion, because as you can see to the left of the driving range toward Veterans, our property line is right there. So we would be putting balls onto another property owner. The potential for ball loss would be pretty high because it's kind of a wooded area that's grown up. The area to the right would still be our property. However, if we stay open as a golf course with the driving range, we would need to net the right side to protect people that are in play. So, getting down to the brass tacks. Based on the estimates that we put together, and these numbers will utilize quite a bit of internal staff to try to keep costs down, we feel that this can be built for $475,000. Now, the biggest cost contributor and the biggest question mark in the cost, as far as the biggest variance, would be the nets and the poles. I've been soliciting quotes from netting companies that do installation, and I've gotten them anywhere from $198,000 up to $1.5 million just for net and poles. The lowest price was based on 350 yards down both sides and a 60-foot height. Most people will tell you a 60-foot height is not adequate, at least on the side where you're trying to protect people from getting actually the potential of getting hit with a ball. would probably need to be 100 feet. But you can start out at the 60-foot mark, go up to 100 and drop back down to 60. The problem is if you go much over 60, you go from wood poles to metal poles, so your cost goes up significantly. The tee box, we feel we can build in-house where we'd have 20 grass tees, which would be a natural, driving or golf type tee, and 20 mats, so be hard surface tees. Then the equipment that we'd need would be the ball machine and a unit to pick up the balls, which it's a minimal investment on the equipment. If you'd like to kind of get an idea of what it might look like, I think this picture was taken at Nashville. Our driving range would look very similar to this once it was completed. So that's essentially what you would view. And if you'll notice, this one has a lower height on the left and a higher height on the right. And we've also put together some numbers on improvements to the to the golf course. I know there'd been a lot of talk about converting it to a par 3 course. When you actually get into the numbers, into the number crunching, it's considerably higher to build the par 3, even utilizing a lot of what we have there already, as opposed to doing some renovation to our current 9 holes. So you're looking at over $100,000 savings to leave it as a 9-hole course with the driving range, as opposed to trying to modify it and take it to a par 3. And if I may, I'll back up a couple of slides. It's quite simple with the property we have to maintain 9 holes with the driving range with the minimal cost, because essentially all we got to do over on the fairway for hole for 6, which is currently a par 5, but it's a long par 5, we can build a new tee and a new green, and then we'd turn the green for fairway, what is currently the 6 green would be the 7 green.
Are you pointing something? Because I don't see it showing up. I can't tell what you're pointing.
Right along here.
Okay.
This is
Can
the
you go through it again?
longest-
Because I didn't see the first one.
Yeah, right there. Can you see it there?
But can you start what the conversation you were having about, or
That's
the
it.
statements you were making about it?
This is to kind of give you information about how we can take our current 9-hole course, make some limited modifications with the driving range built, taking up the number 8 fairway. We can move some holes and some tees around a little bit and still maintain a 35-stroke 9-hole course. Because of number 6 being so long, it's currently a par 5, we can actually add another tee and a green right in this area, which that would then become the number 6 green. This one that is currently the number 6 green would become the number 7 green. And then the number 8 green would be what is now number 7, and our number 9 would finish from here, utilize the existing number 9 green. So we're looking at minimal builds, which is what keeps the cost down to maintain the 9-hole course, as opposed to building a par 3.
Anybody have any questions for Mike? Yes, sir.
Are you done?
I am, as far as with PowerPoint.
Not to interrupt you.
No, he did- no, I didn't entertain any questions at all.
I want to state up front that I don't want to see this course closed, so I always believe in stating my bias up front. That is not my goal. I want to state my bias up front. It is not my goal to see this course closed, so I want to begin with there. I want to be objective as I can about it. I was one of the people going back 10 years or more advocating for a par 3, and then realized that if we build a par 3, not only will it cost us more money, but we lose the ability of high school players to play on a par 3 as it being a sanctioned course. My whole idea behind a par 3 was to encourage the playing of golf, not to discourage it. And so I want to have a course where younger people can play, and it's a sanctioned course. you talked about wood poles versus metal poles and the length of those poles based upon how high the ball's likely to be as it travels its flight.
Sir.
Are those lower poles, wood poles, and the middle poles, higher poles, are those already factored into the costs that you've shown us?
Sir.
With the idea of it would be like that. We would not have to have higher poles, would we, on the left-hand side of what would be the driving range?
That's correct.
Because it would go,
That's
we don't
correct.
want to lose a lot of balls, but we're not dealing with a safety issue on that side.
Exactly, exactly. The left-hand side, one, you're trying to keep the balls so that we can recover them, not having to buy more.
Right.
But two, you want to keep it off of the other folks' property, but 60 foot should be plenty high. The main concern is the right side. The height would need to be to protect people that would be actually in play on the course. If we had the course, they would be in play on hole number 8 and 9. So it would be for safety purposes.
My question next, if you're not the appropriate person to ask, I apologize, and you can defer to who it might be. And that is that if we were to close this course, and I asked for some data before the meeting when I knew this was going to be on the agenda, and we had just last year, in 2018, we had 11,878 rounds played at Riverview.
Yes.
If we close Riverview and those 11,878 rounds go to Paul Walker and go to Crosswinds, can those courses take on another 11,878 rounds?
Would definitely have, for lack of better terms, the trickle-down effect. It would be difficult for them to handle the excess rounds of play because you are playing on a turf. So it's traffic to the turf, it's wear and tear to the turf. It's kind of like on the soccer fields. The more hours of play you have, the harder it is to maintain the turf to keep the facility up to standards. To say that they wouldn't handle the round of plays, nobody really know, but it would be difficult. I think Gabe, he could probably elaborate on that some more. Gabe Nealon, who's our golf superintendent, he's here. He could probably elaborate on that better than I could if you allow him to talk with you.
Anybody's welcome to come up. I do want to say, while he's coming up, if he's coming, I picked 2018 specifically because 2018 is the least number of rounds that were played there. It's the least number of rounds because we started closing the golf course in 17 and 18. In 17, when we closed the golf course during the winter months, we played 12,775 rounds. And then in 2018, we closed it again during the winter months, and so that number dropped down. I'm not talking about peak years. You start looking around the years that Tiger Woods was on the top of the PGA Tour, and I know that may sound silly to a lot of people, but when you have a superstar like that playing, people want to play the game. They're interested in it. We saw a boom in golf around that time, and if you go back to those years, you're talking about 22,099 rounds. Gabe is a smarter man than I am, but I also know that Crosswinds and Paul Walker can't take 22,000 more rounds. There's not enough daylight in the day, and there's not enough grass seed to keep grass on the course. So, Gabe, if you could just talk about using the 11,878 rounds as the least number of rounds that have ever been played at Riverview.
What you run into is time. You just run out of time to get those people onto the other two golf courses. Crosswinds, we run a tee sheet. We do tee times there. At Paul Walker, we do it's kind of first come, first serve. You play your 9 holes, then you get in line behind the next paying customer if you're trying to make a turn to play 18 holes. And with, the closing of Riverview and those amount of golfers, we just run out of time to get them onto the other two golf courses, especially if if we've got a high school match going on or we're closed for half a day for an outing at Crosswinds. That puts all the pressure on to Paul Walker to be our only golf for the day.
You a golfer?
Yeah, when I can get out there.
When you go play, if the course that you're going to play can't accommodate you, what do you do?
So you either go do something else or go look for another golf course.
So, in my opinion, and I want to state up front too that I play golf. I'm not a golfer. I'm not good enough to be a golfer, but I play golf. And when I want to play, I'm going to play. And if that means that I have to drive to another course to be able to play, then I'll go do that. Outside of the public golf courses in Bowling Green, the public ones that are run by the city, are there other golf courses that are not country clubs?
Outside of Bowling Green and Warren County, yes, there are some other golf courses, but within our area, we're the only public golf.
Do you think, and you may not be able to answer this because it's a subjective question, do you think that if people can't get on our courses, they are likely to leave Bowling Green to play?
I could see that happening, yes.
And so my job as a city commissioner is to make sure people stay in Bowling Green. When I come right down to it, I went to a transportation meeting the other day, and after the transportation meeting was over, somebody came up to me and said, I can't believe you're advocating for transportation in counties and other counties being a Bowling Green city commissioner. That's antithetical to me. I want there to be as much transportation to drive as many people into Bowling Green as possible. That's where the jobs are. That's where they're going to spend money. Every person who leaves Bowling Green to play golf is not only paying a green fee at somebody else's course, but they're likely gassing up their car, they're likely buying a meal, they're likely doing things in these other places, and that's just lost revenue for Bowling Green. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
If we look at some of your slides, you talked about the 9-hole course renovation versus the par 3 course renovation. Construction, thank you. Par 3 course construction and renovating the 9-hole. When I look at the bottom numbers of that, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to make a smaller course that high schools can't play and spend, my math isn't good, but we'll say roughly $100,000 more on.
The other thing too, Commissioner Nash, is to consider with the par 3 versus, I like the par 3 idea too at the beginning, but the more we thought about it, the other side of things is you can't charge the same green fees on a par 3 course as you can a 9-hole, which could lead to an 18-hole round. And on a par 3 course where you're playing a 100-yard shot, you're not likely to rent a golf cart if it's a shorter course. If we were planning to, if we were to go that route, we were planning to keep it on the pro shop side half of the course and let that back half over the ridge be something else. So we were trying to compact it into the front half of the course. And that's what, drove up the cost because we had to build, I think it was 4 new greens, Mike?
New greens.
And at $20,000 a green, plus, and then you're losing the revenue on the other side. You're kind of burning the candle at both ends. So that's kind of what we were looking at with the par 3.
Again, I don't think the par 3 makes sense like I thought it would when I learned that the high school players wouldn't be able to play. My next question is for Katie, maybe, or someone. Do you know how many soccer fields we have?
I don't.
Mike should know.
I'm like, yeah, I think there's 16, 17, 18, there's maybe 20.
You know how much we spend on the soccer fields?
A lot. I can't tell you an exact number. We have for Lover's Lane, I want to say the budget's somewhere around, is it $300,000 in order to keep those greens up to date?
And do you know how much we charge for a person to go out and play on the Lover's Lane soccer fields?
Nothing.
Yeah, mostly nothing. There's
Yeah.
some tournament play, and I think we charge maybe $1 a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how many tennis courts we have?
10 at Kariakis.
You know roughly how much we spent to repave those 10 tennis courts at Kariakis last time we repaved them?
Sir, I don't.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000. You know, I can keep going about how many swing sets we have in the city of Bowling Green that we operate. None of them require anybody to pay to be able to use them. And I think it is disappointing at best. And I've been on this commission coming up on 12 years, not consecutively, but I'm terribly bothered that we've somehow singled out golf as being different than other athletic endeavors that we have in Bowling Green. And it's interesting to me because there's only one other sport that I know that we've done of that in the city of Bowling Green, and they're on what I would call opposite ends of the socioeconomic ladder, but yet we've somehow done it. And one is the skate park, because we didn't want to spend much money on those kids. And now we have golf, and the argument that I hear on that is people who play golf should be able to afford to play golf somewhere other than on the backs of the taxpayers. And both are wrong. One of the major things that government does is collectively we can do for others what we can't do for ourselves. Raise your hand in this room if you can build a golf hole. Not 9, not 18, 1. All right. 2 people. And that's because, I don't know if it's because you have the space, the money, or the expertise, but I'm going to take 2 people out of the room can do it. And so nobody else can. I hope you know these 2 people so you can go play, and I hope they'll let you play on their course, their hole. I just think it's wrong that we've taken one sport, and I've seen this commission do this before, and we single that sport out and make it different than all the other sports that we have. And that's only done by continuing to inundate people over and over and over again with the evils of golf. Golf provides something that no other sport does. If we just talk about athletics, what other sport do you call a penalty on yourself? There isn't one. Other sports, you're celebrated for the dirtier you play and the less likely you get caught. There's so much more to me about this than just golf and what it teaches and what it says about our community, that we are a growing community, that we have the kind of problems like we had earlier talking about connectivity because we're growing. But yet at the same time, we're talking about taking away recreational activities for those very people that we're trying to recruit into town. You've looked at me 3 or 4 times.
No,
I'm done
just
for
waiting.
now.
I'm just waiting for you.
Waiting for me to get off my soapbox?
No, I'm just waiting for you to let me know when you finish.
I'm done for now.
Joe, did you have a question earlier? I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and Commissioner Nash had a question about it too, in terms of incorporating the extra cost that you mentioned earlier, and I just didn't get the clarity I needed.
Driving range or the course?
The driving range around those metal poles and the
Okay.
netting. So this estimate includes the metal poles and the 100-foot nets that we would need.
Would be a combination of wood poles and metal poles. It wouldn't, the only place there would be the metal poles would be in the areas that are 100 feet.
But you had mentioned that it is, I don't know what the source is, but deemed 60-foot is being deemed inadequate. And so I'm just checking, what are the chances of us building it and investing in it and finding out that 60-foot is indeed inadequate, and then having to bring in 100-foot spots where we weren't anticipating previously?
If you think about a golf ball trajectory, when you've hit the ball from the tee, of course you've got a natural rise to a peak to a fall. And that's what you're trying to accomplish, is keep that ball within that trajectory So you're safe starting out at a lower height, peaking in the middle, and then fading back down to a lower height.
But on one side, you're not going to get up to
Okay,
100 foot, right?
Okay, on that left side, and that's probably the best, go back to this map. On that left side, you're not going to have any human traffic, any type of a safety issue on the left side of the course. The only reason to net it there is to keep the balls within the driving range and to keep them off of the private property.
So there's not a chance that that property owner would come back and say, it's not okay that these balls are flying into my yard, you guys are gonna have to put up a bigger net?
You'd have to hit the ball a really long way off track in
Actually-
order to actually get to that
So I
property.
shouldn't,
Yeah,
so if we do it, I
actually-
shouldn't go and
No,
play?
I'm not suggesting that. If you're not that good, you're not going to hit it that far, period, let alone that far off track.
The other thing,
And I've only been interested in golf myself for a couple of years thanks to this new job. I'd never played before. But it's my understanding if you're right-handed, which most people are, if you hit right-handed, if you're going to shank, it shanks right-handed most of the
You're
time,
more
not
likely to hit a
left.
slice, which is going to go left towards the course, than you are to hit a hook that's going to go towards.
the other thing to think about is
I did it right.
60 feet is basically 6 stories, a 6-story building that you're hitting over. And so you're beginning to intermediate golfers are not going to be able to do that, I don't think. Your youth, you're starting out. Now, your experienced golfers would be able to do that, but the way we're going to configure the range is more like a semicircle, kind of amphitheater shaped, where everyone would be kind of faced into the middle of the range, where you could kind of direct people. If they were down on the left end of the range tee box, they would be hitting more out to the center and right of the range to keep those balls away from the left side. And so we feel like if somebody spots a big slicer out there, we're going to go tell the slicer to go down to the left end of the range and hit balls and not put them on the right end of the range. So
I just want to make sure that I'm getting a full picture of the potential costs. And so I just want to make sure I understand completely how these costs are figured.
here's the other thing I don't think we mentioned is we want this to be kind of a self-service type range. We plan on buying a golf ball machine that you would be able to walk up to, put your $8 or $10 in, get a bucket of balls or your debit card, swipe it, the balls dump into a basket, and you're walking off and hitting balls in the range. We wouldn't want to have an attendant there. The attendant would be there to pick up balls off the range with the picker, refill the machine. That's why we're also talking with this other entity about a management contract for staffing the pro shop. We could save lots of money on staffing the pro shop through a possible management contract. We can't go into any further details, but we're looking at that option too. So you could have a standalone ball machine. You go down there, swipe a card to put your bills in at $8 or $10 a bucket. I mean, think about the money, multiply that by however many you think we think we can get 30 or 40 people on that range on the grass once we get it built. It's going to be close to 75 yards, 50 to 75 yards wide, which is a really good size tee box range to hit from. Then we'd have mats behind the grass. On rainy days, you could go down there. If we roped off and closed the grass, you'd still be able to hit off 20 to 25 mats as well and still make money on it.
So what is the longevity of the type of nets we were looking at that's on the lower end of the net quality? And the poles too, how long do they last?
Poles, you can get a considerable lifetime out of them, 20 years, 25 years. The net is about 10 to 12 years lifespan.
And then, what'd you say the net was? I'm sorry.
It'll run about $3 a square foot. So in this case, you're probably looking at about $110,000 to replace just the net.
And how long did you say it would last?
10 to 12 years.
10 to 12 years, okay. And then Could you talk a little bit about the greens, how we're going to be renovating the greens, and, and the irrigation?
Okay, yeah. That is probably a good place to make the point about one reason that keeping the a 9-hole is so much more cost-effective than trying to build a par 3 is we're going to utilize just about all of the existing tees and greens. All they need is renovation. The way they are right now, they're a clay-based pop-up green, what's called a pop-up green, with bent grass. The problem is because of it being red clay, it's compacted, it doesn't drain well. So when you have a lot of water, like, well, even if you're putting the water, trying to keep the bent grass alive in hot weather, it doesn't have an ability to get out of that soil. And bent grass roots grow down, so it essentially sets up root rot, and it causes the grasses to die. We're proposing putting in Bermuda, which is a warm season grass. It loves it hot. So we'd have to renovate the greens, dig down, put in a sand base, 8-10 inches, foot thick. But Bermuda grass likes to go out. The roots go out, not down. So the water's not as much of a problem. So the root rot and the dying grass is not as much. So that's what we're proposing with the $20,000 as far as like building a new green, which would be Bermuda, regrassing all the greens on the course, roughly $60,000 to sprig. And then the irrigation, I can't say a lot about it yet, but there's been some talk about something that's pretty interesting that could be exciting. We've had some conversation with BGMU. They have to backwash their treatment filters at the water plant every day to the tune of about 250,000 gallons a day. The EPA requires them to treat that water as sewer water. We could utilize that water as irrigation water, which would save them some money because they wouldn't have to treat it anymore. It'd save us money because we're not actually having to buy city water or get it from the river or anything like that. So it could be a win-win situation for both. It would be quite unique and something, that could be talked about all over the state, if you ask me, between cities. Because there has been a big push in the golf and the sports turf industry to use recycled water for irrigation. And this just kind of come around in the last couple of weeks, so we've got some more talk to do, to figure out how this could work. But they actually, from what I understand, have some settlement beds that they're not using that could be utilized for storage of this water that we could actually pull the water from and irrigate. So that's something we're excited about, but the irrigation, essentially we'd have to replace everything that's there now. So, piping, heads, controls, but we feel like we have a pretty good shot at a good source for irrigation.
We also have the potential for getting a conservation grant through, I forget the name of it. Is Brent still here? Thank you, Brent.
Yeah.
The conservation people.
Yes.
The conservation.
That we could use toward some of this cost as well. I think we'd have maybe a decent shot at getting some money from that.
So we're talking about $250,000 for 9-hole renovation, plus the driving range.
That's the driving range, yes, sir.
And what is the driving range gonna cost?
The driving range, we have estimated it at $475,000. But now in saying that, keep in mind, through research, proven numbers, we think conservative figure would be $150,000 a year that it could bring in. So that's less than a 5-year payback on that investment.
And what did you say on the driving range?
Cost-wise, $475,000.
So,
I have $145,000 to $195,000. Am I wrong?
Yes.
so I'm just curious about in terms of doing both
going
the
off old
renovation of the
slides.
9-hole and the putting in a driving range at the same time. Are we also thinking about changing the course to Bermuda grass and keeping it as is and seeing how that does, just as let's upgrade it, the irrigation and the grass?
That would definitely be an option that could be considered. It wasn't what we were presenting tonight, But that could definitely be considered. You could take that $250,000 number, and essentially you could reduce it by 50,000, maybe a little more.
Would it just upgrade the greens and the irrigation? How much would that cost?
Upgrade your greens, you'd be looking at a cost of roughly, we've got 8 there, that's 60,000. We'd have to add another one in, so 80,000. The irrigation, $200,000. And now that would update what we currently have, and that would go to Bermuda greens.
Because you wouldn't have to create a new cart path?
Oh.
Or construct new tees?
We do need some cart path improvements out there. It would be good, but even at that, if you take out the the two tee box construction and the green construction, you're looking at almost 60,000, or we got the total there at 20,000 times 2. But 200,000, and we should be able to do the cart path improvements too.
And
So
if
that
we-
is definitely the cheaper of the 3 options.
And if we decide to put in a driving range, would this be adding additional cost by doing it in 2 separate phases?
Yes. The best place for the driving range that we've found by looking quite a bit and considering it a lot would be that number 8 fairway. So if you decided to put in the driving range later, you're still going to have the modifications that would need to come as far as you're taking away 1 tee and green, so you're going to have to build a new one, shift an existing tee and green up, so you're back into your 475 number essentially.
Right, but I'm just asking if you're going to put the same grass in the driving range as you are just upgrading it's a separate type of grass?
It could be a separate type of grass.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea behind the driving range was to add another source of revenue down there. So we're still looking at allowing our disc golf disc golfers to go down there and play the baskets. There's 18 baskets that would still be available down there. They could rent carts for $10 to play. That's one small source. The other source would be the driving range, of course, or a new source is the driving range that we really think can produce anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 if it catches on. And it's going to be open 10 to 12 hours a day. It could be more of a fun venue for people to go to that don't usually play golf. Could be a date kind of venue or a group outing or birthday parties. It could be a lot of different things, and that's kind of why we were looking at a range, because we can't build a Top Golf in Bowling Green, but we can have our own little version of a Top Golf where you go have fun and you hit balls and you have a party, and it's a fun atmosphere. And then you throw a revitalized, renovated 9-hole course in with those other 2 revenue sources, and you've got a viable entity again. And so that's a big reason that we've come up with this idea of the range, because a range is such a revenue producer at a very low cost. I mean, the only cost you have is the mowing on it. You're not treating you might throw down some weed killer and fertilizer every now and then, but it's not like maintaining a 9 or 18-hole golf course. I mean, the costs are low, and you pay some dude or dudette to go out and pick balls every once or twice a day and load the machine up.
I know you guys went out and talked to different folks.
Sorry.
I appreciate your cultural sensitivity. Yeah, I do.
Man or woman, it could be either one. Doesn't have to be a man on that ball picker.
That's right.
So I know you guys went and researched the different driving, what is it called? Driving range?
Driving range.
Driving range, okay. You can tell I'm not a golfer. So did you talk to some folks whose business maybe didn't succeed here in Bowling Green? Because I know we've had one here in the past. So do we know why some don't succeed and why this one would?
I think the reason the one on Scottsville Road did not stay in place is because the land became more valuable than the business. The one on Russellville Road, I can't really answer because When I gathered those numbers, those were really decent numbers, and I'm not sure why that one didn't last. But the one we went to in Nashville, maybe it's in a really good neighborhood, but it's still, even if we produce half of what it's producing, we're still way ahead of the game. So,
As I understand it, Russellville Road had a different property owner and a different business owner, and there was a dispute. But I've been told that.
over the lease.
There was a dispute. I don't really know.
There may be some people
Yeah,
that
I want to make sure that we call on anybody who wants to speak.
Thank you, Mike. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
the research
that's
you
your
did.
job.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I presume you're coming up to say something?
I am.
Give us your name and
I
address,
am.
please, sir.
My name's Adam Witt. I'm the boys golf coach at Bowling Green High School and also a very avid golfer here in Bowling Green. I'll speak first from the avid golfer side. What Mr. Meisel here is presenting is what Bowling Green golfers want. It's kind of well understood within the golfing community that he who puts up the first driving range in this town is going to win. I think you'd be hard-fetched to find any community as big as Bowling Green that does not have a driving range. And I don't have those numbers with me right now, but you'd be very hard-fetched to find a place this size with this many golfers that does not have a driving range. The reason that golfers right now don't play Riverview are the greens are almost unputtable. And that's the reason that 95% of golfers go to play golf. One of the reasons, the first question that we ask each other is, well, how are the greens? You don't really want to go putt on greens that have been punched. You don't want to putt on greens that are dead. You want to go putt on good greens. The rest of the golf course, you can make your way and you make do with, but you definitely want to have greens that are puttable. And that's a really big aspect of why somebody would go to play golf. And I'll second what Mr. Nash said. If I'm going to go play golf on a Saturday morning, I'm going to go play golf. Whether I call crosswinds, I can't get a tee time, and if I go to Paul Walker and I'm going to be the 14th person in line, well, then I'm going to go get in my car and I'm going to go to Barron River, I'm going to go to Glasgow, or I'm going to go to Scottsville, or I'm going to go try to find somewhere to play golf. For me, it's as far as Dale Hollow, which is an hour and a half to 2 hours away. I do think that driving range and Bermuda greens, and you guys know this probably more than I do, but I think the Bermuda greens at Paul Walker have been very successful. They're going to withhold a lot of traffic. They're very durable greens, and I don't think that you have to worry about it anymore. In fact, Indian Hills, one of the country clubs in town, just put on the same greens because they were having traffic problems. I don't think that you'd ever have to worry about those greens again. I'll put on another hat, and I've been the boys golf coach at Bowling Green High School for 10 years. And I normally have about 20 members on my team every year, and probably half of those kids are country club kids, and half of those kids are kids that grew up playing municipal golf in Bowling Green. Over my 10 years, I've never had, outside of the putting green at Crosswinds, anywhere to go and practice. So for me to be having a high school golf team and I don't have one uniform place to take 20 kids and practice, that's been a huge problem and has really put me behind lots of other schools in the state of Kentucky. I've got kids that are members at Indian Hills. I've got kids that are members at Bowling Green Country Club. I've got kids that are members at Old Stone. And I can't go and have one practice at one place because I've got 6 kids that don't belong to any club and 3 kids that belong to the other one and 4 kids that belong to another one.
Do you down there to play now?
Riverview?
Yeah, is that where you practice?
No, we do our practice at Crosswinds right now, but there's no place to hit balls. So when I say practice, I mean we get to chip and putt, but there is no place for me to work with a kid as far as his golf swing is concerned. If we are able to revitalize Riverview, my kids like the golf course. I like the golf course. The only reason we're not there right now is because you can't putt, and it's really hard when you take that aspect out of the game of golf. I'm not doing my golf program or my kids any justice if I don't have that place to go and to work on that aspect of the game.
You're telling me that you would move your practices from Crosswinds to
would move a good portion. I would still like to play crosswinds with my varsity kids. Just the golf course itself is a little bit longer. It prepares them a little bit more, but I would move a substantial amount of my practices and rounds to Riverview. And I think, and I've spoken with every high school golf coach in the area, and we would for sure, you've got 9 high school golf teams with approximately probably 70 or 80 when you combine boys and girls golf members that have nowhere to practice. And I think if you're able to revitalize Riverview, you've already got a very nice, large putting green. The grass isn't very big, or the grass isn't very good, but the area is there. I know Dan Dillingham, who just had to leave, was a golf coach at Greenwood High School, and he echoes my sentiment. We were able to have a few matches there at the end of last year. We weren't able to get a lot out of it because of how bad the greens were. It gives us a place to go, but it doesn't necessarily improve the quality of what we're trying to do. Again, to be able to have that type of area to take youth golfers would be very beneficial to the high school programs around here. And I think just crunching the numbers right here in front of you in the top of my head, I think we could probably do anywhere from 400 to 500 rounds of the high school kids each golf season, and that's from July 15th to the first week of October. That we would be able to do, and that also, it does remove some of us from your other golf courses. Right now, if we were to we have a standing date at Paul Walker on every Tuesday, and where we shut the course down from 3:30 to 5:30, and we have 35 to 40 kids that go out there and play. I can speak for all the other coaches. We would happily move that to Riverview, and that would free up more of Paul Walker and would free up more of Crosswinds for the rest of the community to have. Another thing is that I think that Rolling Hills and Russellville, you're going to have golfers in Russellville that are going to come down. They've lost their golf course there. You're going to have more people that are going to pack their car, and instead of leaving Bowling Green to go somewhere else, I think you're going to see an influx of people that are going to leave other places and come to Bowling Green. And I think having that third golf course that's there as an option is going to be very vital for golf in our city. Let me look over my notes here, but I know, we talked about 12,000 rounds over the course of putting my golfer hat back on, 12,000 rounds, dispersing those over the rest of the year. I'm a fast player. I like to play. I like to go when I get out there. And if there's 12,000 other players, if they're looking at 45 or 50 a day that are going to be out there, I think you're really limiting golf in Bowling Green. So I appreciate you guys' time for letting me talk here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. Bob, I know that you came specifically to speak tonight. You let me know. You want to come on up?
Good evening. My name is Bob McLean. I'm the course superintendent at Indian Hills Country Club, and I don't want to see this golf course close either. The revenue or the rounds played going to the other golf courses, they cannot support it, and I really don't feel that the clientele that plays at Riverview will go to the other golf courses. They more than likely live on that side of town, and that's where they want to play. Excuse me. I think we really need to look at this from a money standpoint, and it's not something we should just step into willy-nilly. I think we probably have a golf course architect come in and take a look. None of us here are golf course architects. I've built a couple of golf courses. I know what's going on, but you're always going to want an architect to look at it. As far as cost, I think these numbers are probably close, maybe a little low on some of the things. I've just done some major renovations at Indian Hills Country Club. Irrigation number looks a little low to me. I don't know if the infrastructure coming from the sewage plant has been put into this. You're gonna need greens covers on these ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass. I'm not sure if this has been put into these numbers. But as far as golf goes, with the commission and making decisions on golf courses with the city, I've seen as a taxpayer what I feel is some waste. Starting with the construction of Crosswinds Golf Course. When it was built and completed, there were only 17 holes. You need 18 holes to play around the golf. To this day, we're still leasing property from the airport to take care of that mistake made way back when. When the barn and pro shop at Riverview burnt down back in the early 2000s, it was doubled as a maintenance and as the pro shop. And that barn, and it was a barn, had a dense grade gravel floor. And at that time, I know Riverview was still under consideration as to whether or not it was going to remain a golf course or were we going to close it. And the commission at the time decided to build a $2 million building to replace a barn with a dense grade gravel floor for a 9-hole golf course where, to be honest, a double wide trailer could have suited the needs instead of a $2 million building. The stormwater and drainage ponds, irrigation ponds, are Crosswinds. Those were budgeted at $700,000 to be done. Not a few weeks after the completion of those jobs, they fell in. So the construction wasn't done properly, and stop me when I get there, was it 1.2, 1.3, 1.6 to finally get that job completed and completed correctly, which to this day it's not. It's still leaking. So we're still spending money on these projects. So it's my understanding that this building will be paid off at Riverview in just the very next few years. So do we reconstruct greens? Maybe put in a new entrance, some new signs, rebrand Riverview, and maybe make a profit? Or do we go ahead and spend some more money? And I understand you all did some research and there might be some profit to be made or bring in some money, but is Riverview the right place for that? Are there any other properties within the city park system that a driving range can be built at? We've all talked about if this property goes fallow, there's an element that could come in. Do we want to have a party over there? Do we want to have a party or take a date and smell the sewer system churning over there? I'm not so sure I would. I just think we need to make some smart decisions, make sure we're looking at our monies properly, and just get all the information we can before we move forward. Thank you.
No question. I just want the record to show that the two people in the room who raised their hand that they could build golf courses are both golf superintendents.
I just do want to correct, we didn't spend $2 million on the Riverview Pro Shop. It was maybe $1 million, so it's still too much.
There's the man.
Howdy, stranger.
Hello, guys.
I was happy with the old barn.
I'm Tony Whitmer, local golf course superintendent. Used to work for the city for many, many years and had the privilege of operating this golf course. We're talking about possibly closing, and you know, for my personal standpoint, I don't want to see that happen. For one, I grew up playing that course, and you know, I spent a lot of sweat labor down there trying to keep it alive during the summer months. And you know, what we've talked about is, you know, the biggest problem that course has is its greens. One of the best layouts of any 9-hole course I've ever played, and the setting is just, you know, phenomenal to be located that near downtown Bowling Green. And, you know, you feel like you're in a country setting. So I just hate to see this course, you know, go to waste. In my years with the city, I spent a lot of time trying to get improvements made there to no avail. You know, and what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is something that I, you know, hoped would happen, you know, during my tenure, but it didn't. But I'd love to see those greens regrassed at the very minimal. And the thing I'm noticing, though, the number there is probably the sprigging cost to do the greens, but it doesn't include any type of renovation to the actual playing surface. And what happened, those greens were built in 1969. Green speeds were probably 6 or 7 on a stimp meter reading. That's the speed of the green. Today, you know, a good quality putting surface would be, you know, at least 9, probably double digits in 10s or 11s. So those greens would have to be leveled in some way. So, you know, you strip the grass, re-level them, and then you go in and do your sprigging process. So there's another additional cost, which while be fairly minimal, that would probably have to be included in that cost. And as far as the irrigation goes, I would say that would be adequate for greens and tees, but that course has no fairway irrigation either. And the irrigation system that's there is so inadequate. It's, you know, some of my best years as a golf course superintendent were the years that I made it through a summer and had grass on the greens. And, you know, those were very few, you know, few and far between. So, and I consider myself a, you know, pretty good turf manager. But anyway, I just hope you'll consider, you know, trying to keep that place open. I mean, the driving range would be a great bonus to have a place for, you know, if you're not a country club member here in Bowling Green, you have nowhere to go practice and work on your game. And it'd be great if we could, you know, come up with a place where we could do that. But that's about all I've got to say. I just hope you'll, you know, consider to keep that course open for the citizens of Bowling Green. Thank you.
Tony? Thank you, sir. Mr. Newton?
I am Mike Newton. For the past 9 years, I've been the coach at Greenwood High School, and this year I've stepped down to the assistant role. But I've got some experience in going to other golf courses in the area, and I also played my high school golf down at Riverview. So the greens are the #1 thing. You can play a golf course with preferred lies and tee the ball up, and on the tee you get to put it on a tee. But if you've got the bad greens, it doesn't work. I agree that some of the slopes there are so severe, if you put high quality grass on them, they're going to be close to unplayable without modifying them some.
What now?
They're so severe, the slopes on some of those greens, because in the old days the grass was longer, the mowers weren't as good, and the turf wasn't as good. So if you put really good grass on the slopes you have out there now, they'll be close to unplayable at times.
Say slopes, you're not talking about the greens, you're just talking.
I'm talking about the
anyway.
slope of the green.
Slope of
If
the
you don't modify that a little bit, as he just said, you could have some greens that you almost can't play. Remember, that golf course was made in a time when our greens speeds on a municipal course are what they were playing now, are what they were playing the Masters at. But the big thing I noticed that I wanted to talk about was the cost. I think it's $5 to play 9 holes down there, and I think it was $5 when I was in high school. I think that you should give some very serious thought to raising the cost, and I think it would be across all 3 courses. I think you got to look at them as a group. And I think you're talking about maybe you raise it $2 a round and you make this thing cash flow. But if you put good greens on it, and Kenny Perry's charging $23 to play 9 holes, you can charge $12. And I can tell you, I've been around golfers. I've had a number of public course golfers on my golf team. We've been to a number of golf courses all over the state. Golfers would rather pay a little bit more and have a nice product. And I really think you're dealing with a group of people who are willing to pay a reasonable rate. I think you can charge more if you make these improvements. So I don't think you just get more rounds. I think you can justifiably charge more and have a happier clientele. Plus, when I was the golf coach, we didn't play but 1 home match in 9 years. Until last year, we played a couple out of Riverview. And the reason was we took Riverview off of our radar. It wasn't a game of skill on those greens. That meant when we went over to Paul Walker, or if we went over to Crosswinds, both it cost us money, which playing out of town doesn't when we're their guest, but we just clogged the golf course up. I mean, we just basically, if we go play Paul Walker and have a high school match out there, Brent Belcher's helped us work that out. So when we go, we try to take enough golfers to justify it, and we basically close the course. But my whole point of that is that there is such a need for that golf course in operating condition that for 9 years I took my team out of the county to play. And if it was in good shape, you'll get golfers. And the driving range is a bigger deal, I think, than anyone thinks, because there isn't anywhere to go. I agree, the Audi was, the land just became so much more valuable than a driving range would be. But the other driving range that's around is Kenny Perry's, and if you've ever been there, it's quite small and it's just grass, and right now it's just mud. So if you have mats and grass, good golfers are going to want to be on grass generally. Not so good golfers are going to want to be on mats. But if you have both, you'll get people to come to that. I mean, I can see my team doing that. I've taught kids to play golf and fathers to play golf with their daughters. They'll go out there and spend $20 on range balls and just have a great time and go back home. So I think it can be profitable for the city of Bowling Green, not just to break even. But I do think you need to look at your charge structure across the board, because when I compare those rates to other golf courses around, there are places I think that you could charge more, and I don't think golfers would complain, especially with the product you're talking about putting out there.
You know, if Greenwood would do their practice and, or
Yeah,
the
I'm
other
pretty
county
sure
schools?
that they would. Dan Dillingham and I've talked. He took over this year. We've never had a golf course. So we've never gone to Crosswinds. We've never gone to Paul Walker. We've actually, in my 9 years, I never held a practice. We held qualifiers and told them to practice on their own, because our deal was we paid green fees to go, and, you know, it starts to stack up. And I had kids who were country club kids, and they go to the club and practice, and I had kids who were kids in municipal courses. So a golf course for us to be able to hit golf balls on and go play would be if I was still the coach, I could confirm it. But I have talked to Dan, and I think he is excited about that opportunity.
Oh, any of the other county schools would participate in that as well? I know you may not have asked.
We have a
them, but
note from Joe Hood. Warren Central said they would. And didn't you also talk to the South Warren girls coach? Yes, they would as well. And yeah. And Greenwood's girls, I don't know that they practice anywhere either, so I think that would be a good venue for them. See, I call it Hopson Grove because that's what it was when I was a boy. Hopson Grove has something that Paul Walker doesn't have, that you don't have to wear a helmet. Bad golfers do not hit it straight. And so we used to kid at Paul Walker that you should pay your green fee and get your helmet and tee off, because golf balls are going to come your way. So inexperienced or beginning golfers tend to like to go out there because they actually do worry about hurting people. And you get a big, strong person out there that hits it pretty hard, and they hit it 250 yards that way and 50 yards that way. At Paul Walker, somebody's ducking. At Riverview, they're not. So I just my big thing was cost. I don't want you to forget that if you improve it, you're right now charging between a fourth and a half of what your competition is charging. So I think you could also get additional revenue off that.
Well, I will tell you that was on purpose. We lowered it, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, because we knew the play wasn't, or the course wasn't up to par.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Duke.
you.
Anyone else?
We are not making a decision tonight, are we?
I think they're looking for some consensus because the time is running out for being able to get something started in the grass growing this year.
If we wait much longer, we'll lose what we have, maybe to the point of not being able to bring it back. But if we can bring it back, it'll be at significantly more cost to do it.
Yes, sir.
As far as your time frame to grow in the ultra-dwarf Bermuda grass, you'd be starting somewhere in mid-June, and it would take anywhere from 9 to 12 weeks for the greens to grow in reasonably for play to begin.
Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it. Yes, sir.
One person come to the mic and tell me what our total figure is for a driving range and renovation of the 9 holes.
Mike, I believe that's you.
Looking at the 475 would be the driving range. And the-
475 driving range.
Yes, sir. And then an additional 250 to renovate the existing 9-hole course.
We have found, or Katie has done some research, we have $739,000 available in this fiscal year from underspending and on various other projects and some contingency as well in the Parks Improvement Fund, in the Golf Fund, which is still general fund, and I think that was the only two funds we're talking about. But so we could pull together some funds fairly quickly in this fiscal year and see how far they go.
Did our estimates include the possible renovation of the slopes? And have we talked to an architect?
We think that would be minimal. When you put the sand down for the Bermuda, you would just reshape some of the slopes as you reseed the greens. It's nothing major. Tony can correct me on that, but or Gabe. Is Gabe still here? Is that a true statement, Gabe?
Yeah, we got about three greens out there that would need to be addressed for the Bermuda.
But when you strip them off and you get ready to put the new surface down, that's when you would reshape some of the slopes where the ball wouldn't roll off the green like a marble on a glass table kind of thing. You would have to redo that as you were putting in the sand and putting down the sprigs.
Anybody else in the room that wanted to give us an idea? Come on up, Jay.
My name's Jay Yates, and I've played that course for the last
50
10, 12 years. Yeah, 50.
The last 50 years.
And the bottom line is it's not been taken care of. We had 30 or 40 people from Morgantown played up here. They don't play here anymore. They left because they were told, we're going to close this course. They closed one out here. We're going to put new greens out here at Municipal, or I still call it Municipal, Paul Walker. When they get done here, they're going to put it over here. We've done the irrigation over there, had to close it. This here stayed open. It's got the bottom line ever since I've been down there. And that's 70-some years. And you don't really know how many soccer fields you got, but what does people my age do for recreation here? And you can go to Kenny Perry's, all the way to Nashville. Your people are staying in the motels here in Nashville, but they're playing golf at Kenny Perry's. And all you got to do, the course hadn't been kept up. When you got grass this tall in the middle of the fairway, and you got people out there that's looking for the ball, because I've done it, you can go number one, grass is this tall. You can't find the golf ball. And those people that work there, their job is to get their money, get the people on the course, and get them off. But you can't run it the way it's been run. There just ain't enough people. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, because I'll tell you right up front, Jeremy does a great job. But if he ain't got the people to work for him, and I've heard this irrigation stuff, water still comes up in the water of the greens. I don't know how bad it is. But you're closer from here to the square from Barron River, and there's all the water in the world there. It wouldn't take that much. From number 6 green over there, it's probably 200 feet, 200 yards, something like that. And the guy that's left here, because y'all was, still got too long, he has another obligation. He works, it's 28 of them members. They quit going, they don't go out there and play all the time. A lot of people, when Riverview closed, they don't go over there and play Paul Walker. Because they fear of getting hit. Because I've almost got hit twice today. I played it today. And some of the kids now don't even holler for. I had one hit right behind me. Never said a word. You know. But if you hire one extra man, just help them mow, you know. And I remember a couple of summers ago when one of the guys retired out there, there was nobody around knew how to sharpen the mower down there. Nobody nowhere was on another golf course. Now that's, if you've ever been on the farm, I think you know how to sharpen a lawnmower. I don't know how. I probably couldn't, but I can. I do my own. But it's just the greens and stuff. It's just not been taken care of. It's not enough people to, you know. So that's. And what these people say, I said, come on down and play. And I used to teach the kids, you know, we'd have the thing set up down there, where did you teach the kids? But they want me to be responsible for them. I'm not gonna be responsible for them. I'd help them teach it. Chuck used to do it. But then that needs to be done. You need to get the young people starting now. And you know, when you're closing it 4 months out of the year, you know, and something needs to be done with the clubhouse. That's too much clubhouse. You know, when you stand here and look up there and you can't throw a rock and hit the top of it, you know, that tells you your heating and cooling bill. Just walk in there and look up. You know, that's, but you need to work on the greens, get the greens good, keep it mowed. Because now they call it a goat range. That's what they call it. When I tell them, I ain't coming down there playing that goat range. You can't argue with them.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Was there anybody else that had a comment on our situation? I think Jeff is looking for a consensus. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to review the material. You know, sometimes it's, you know, I don't have an emotional attachment to golf or a particular golf course. Sometimes we get in the habit of, well, we've always done it, we need to keep doing it. But I think we've put some good thought into this, and I appreciate all the work that you did, especially Mike. Thank you, sir, and Katie and Jeff. We'll tell you that on behalf of the consensus, Sue wanted to continue in some fashion participation in some type of golf, whether it was par 3 or golf range or driving range or whatever. So I think that's what we're looking for now is some kind of consensus. So you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see the city do?
Sure. I mean, I'd at least like to see us regreen and irrigation. And then, yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of folks who said they would also use the driving range. So.
Talking about the driving range and the 9-hole renovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think you got your consensus, so we'll move forward from there. Brent, can you bring me the comments, please? Thank y'all for coming. If y'all, we'll be looking at moving forward with a modified 9-hole renovation and a driving range, it looks like. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we've got 3 people signed in for our public comments section, and Ms. Starr, I think you're first up.
I am the retired executive director of Riverview at Hopson Grove, and I have no comments on the golf course, other than it is popular. Let's take a quick look at the past as I discuss my reasons for supporting the creation of a fairness ordinance in Bowling Green. You will be able to tell that I'm an historian. Here in America, originally only men and those who paid taxes and owned land could achieve the right to vote. That changed. Women fought for over 70 years to achieve the right to vote, and that changed as well. Voting rights continued to expand to include many non-white groups throughout the 20th century. Now, how does this fit into an LGBTQ issue? LGBTQ people here in Bowling Green are discriminated against, sometimes out in the open, but more often than not, housing and employment discrimination is more covert. 42% of LGBT people report experiencing employment discrimination, while 90% of transgendered folks experienced harassment, discrimination, or mistreatment on the job. For example, a gay WKU student was thrown out of his apartment because of his sexual orientation, and he had a horrible time finding a place to live after that. He also had a very hard time with college. The city and the county have invested a great deal of money, effort, and time to develop the tax increment financing district to include commercial, residential, educational, and entertainment venues. That expansion is significant to the city, but we need more than buildings and a baseball diamond to help LGBTQ people feel comfortable here. Immigrants, as well as LGBTQ people, add to a social climate of tolerance toward diversity in cities, and this mixture has a very positive economic outcomes for various regions and cities. The argument here is that vibrant gay and lesbian communities provide one of the strongest signals of diversity and tolerance within the city. A fairness ordinance illustrates to potential businesses and employees that Bowling Green is a progressive place and welcomes all people. Additionally, the fairness ordinance would prohibit discrimination in the workplace, housing, and public accommodations. Why am I here? I have a family member who did not get support to establish a gay-straight alliance at a local high school. I have a cousin who was told by her parents that her sexual preference was wrong. Their minister came to their house and lectured her. She had no local support. She eventually developed a very wicked drug habit, and eventually she conquered that addiction, but she left home. 10 other government municipalities in Kentucky have a fairness ordinance. It is the right thing to do to enact one in Bowling Green, Kentucky's third largest city in the Commonwealth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. The other people on our comment section were here to talk about the golf, so that's the only one we have. I will remind you that our next meeting on April 2nd will not occur unless there's a special call for some reason. And our regular meeting on the 16th of April will continue back, so we'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in.